Hey everybody, it's Andre with the Eaglesoft Field Guide, and I'm here with one of my good friends, Misty from the Patterson Technology Center. Good to see you, Misty. How's it going?
It's good. Really good to see you.
Good. And this is our annual end of year bash, 2023. Sounds like a rock concert.
Yeah. Maybe we could throw one
Yeah,
year
there you
for
go.
end of year. So
We're going to be talking about end of year. We had some questions that came in, and we're going to just rapid fire kind of go through some questions. We do this every year, so there's previous years that everybody can kind of look back on, and we're going to make sure that in the notes for this video that there's some links and resources for everybody. We're going to make sure everybody has resources, but there were some questions that came in between the last time we did a video and this time. Even though that video didn't work out, I did it as a post instead of a video. So let's just kind of go through some of these questions. And here was the first one, Misty. When should I run my end of year?
great question. And I think that really just depends. But the biggest thing to remember is you need to run your end of year after your December end of month is completed, but before your January end of month is completed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So your
Sequence should be okay, so I work, my last day of working is December 28th. I'm going to make up a date. And let's say on December 28th, I run my end of day. I would say, okay, this is my last day, so I'm going to run my end of month. And in that last end of month, I also run my end of year.
Yeah. And you can do it together. You can run your end of year with your end of month, or you can do them separately as well. So
Right.
personal preference.
All right. So, we had a Christmas party and we were just too wasted to ever get anything done. So our next day back is January the 2nd. And we did it on January 2nd, but I was just so hung over for the New Year's that I forgot to do it. And we did our full end of day on January the 2nd. Am I out of luck, or can I still do my end of year?
All good. You can still do your end of year. You just want to make sure you get that end of year done before your end of month for January. So you have some leeway. So it's okay.
Cool. So you have until the end of the month, January, to get it done.
Yes.
Even if you don't do it, just don't end your month in January until you end
Exactly.
year 2023.
Yes. Yes, because your end of year is going to include every end of month you've completed since the last time you ran end of year.
You got it. Cool.
Yep.
So this one is a tricky one, and I'm not going to make you answer this. I'm going to answer it for you.
Okay.
All right, because there is no real answer to this question. How
Right.
long does it take to run your end of year? And here's the answer to the question. It depends. I mean, it really depends. So last year, mid-January, I did a poll, and I asked everybody in the group, how long did it take you to process your end of year? And again, this is not a scientific thing, but this is just the answers from the people in the group. So 229 people said it just took a few minutes, and 50 people said they hadn't done it yet. 35 people said less than an hour.
Mm-hmm.
18 people said a couple of hours. 3 people said 30 minutes. 2 people said seconds. So I'll give that up there.
Wow.
All right. And then somebody said it's still going. And then one person said they had a glitch and they had to get in touch with support and they had to help it. So you can see, of the, let's call this 350 people who wrote in, the majority said a few minutes and it was
Mm-hmm.
done. So
Yeah.
without a true answer to the question, this is what your colleagues are finding: is it takes a few minutes to get it done, but maybe a couple hours on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a really great question. And I wish there was a solid answer that we could provide, but like you said, it depends. How fast is your equipment that you're using? You know, your computer equipment. How big is your practice? How many patients do you see? How many transactions do you do? How many, you know, edits and adjustments and deletions do you do for, you know, correcting mistakes, etc. All makes that time vary. The big thing that I would say is, if you think it's been an hour and it's still not done, number one, make sure you're reading the messages on the screen, because your reports could be printed, and after your reports print, it asks you if you want to go ahead and proceed with end of year processing. You have to click yes to that. If you click no, it's just going to close out. You might think it's done. But if you forget to click yes because you walked away, then it looks like it's still processing. And the other thing is, if you've clicked yes and the progress bar is going, that it's actually processing your end of year, let it run. And that's why I always say, make sure that you're finished seeing patients for the day when you're running your end of year, because you may have to let it run after you've closed for business and you want to go home and come back and make sure it's done the next day. So
I agree. Cool. All right. So
I also thought it would be good to kind of talk about the glitched and froze. That's a good point. I will tell you that probably the number one reason we see where you think that it's glitched and froze, it doesn't necessarily mean it has glitched. It's just taking a really long time. It's because we have a lot of items that need cleaned up in Eaglesoft. Custom hours that don't have an end date, or custom hours that are expired. You've got, treatment plans that are just really old and whatnot. Cleaning those things up is going to help your end of year go faster.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Cool. Great. So let's go on to the next one. And the next one was the office will be closed end of December through beginning of January, on options to do all of this sometime mid-January. All right. So we answered that question for Kyle earlier, which is yes, you can do it mid-January as long as you haven't ended your January. But if you're doing it mid, that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. And this might be, if this is something that you do consistently each year, you might want to look into possibly doing the automated processing as well.
That's a good idea. We'll talk about that too. How to remove old team members from the list of dropdowns.
Yeah, great question.
This is a great time to do this, is to inactivate those old employees and or providers.
Yes. So I talked a little bit before about cleaning up, anything that in Eaglesoft that you can, like the, expired custom hours and old treatment plans, etc. This is another one we recommend to clean up too, is any provider that's no longer with the practice. And it's a wizard in Eaglesoft. So you can do that right in Eaglesoft from the utilities menu. And then you go to mass updates. And then there's an inactivate provider wizard. And that wizard is really important because it allows you to transfer, anybody that has them as their preferred provider to somebody new. And if there's any open appointments, etc., just in case there's something in there. Big thing to remember for that is make sure there's no claims open on that provider.
Yeah. Or we'll close them. It'll take you through the process of closing those claims. Yeah.
Yeah, it will. I always recommend to do it before so that you don't have to do it while the wizard is running. Just makes it a little bit easier to manage. But you'll still see that provider in the list until you run your end of year. Yeah. So once you inactivate, then run.
That was a next thing that came up, because somebody said that, here's the thing, they'll still be on reports that they would have been included. So so the example I use is if you ran a list, if you inactivated somebody on December 31st, 2023, but then you said, I want a report of all services that were done from 2010 to 2023, of course, that same provider is going to be on that list.
It will be, yes. Yeah. But any current report, like any report that's for like current time frame after they were inactivated plus end of year ran, they won't be in that list. So it'll be a little bit cleaner for you.
Your 2024 list will not include those providers.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So what was the next one? How do I do insurance maximum reset?
So, this is a great question too. Some practices, it just really depends on who you partner with for insurance, what insurance you accept. But some do this every month. Within a month, they reset the maximums, because not every insurance resets in January. Some reset in the middle of the year. Most of them are in January, but you can do that with end of year, and it's part of the wizard, and it wants you to put in months. And just remember, the months to reset are equivalent to 1 equals January, 2 equals February. So you want to make sure to put with anniversary months between 1 and 1, and that will reset any insurance company that has a reset month of January.
Yeah. And that's really important, because if you do your end of year in January, it's going to default to a 2 up there.
Correct.
So you have to make sure you go back to 1 and 1. And if you goof, it's easy to reset it, especially at the beginning of the year. We can always go back and run this again to just reset insurance balances. There's a utility to do this. And it's not a big deal. We can reset it. It's not as bad as if we did this in October, you know?
Yes, because there's really no undo button. There's no undo button. So, but yes, you definitely can, as long as you make sure to pay attention to those reset months. Don't put, I think the biggest mistake that I see here is somebody putting 1 and 12,
Yeah.
and that resets every single reset month. And that's not what we want to do. We do 1 and 1. So really, best practice is to do it each month. When you run your end of month, when you're running your January end of month, you're going to reset for February 2 and 2. When you're running your February end of month, 3 and 3. That's the best practice.
Agreed. Let's see what's next on here. Oops, I went too far. Okay, what are the best end of year reports?
That's a good question. That's another, it depends. It depends. So,
I brought up the ones that
yeah,
that automatically generate,
yeah,
and then I have a list of ones that of reports that I typically
yes.
print.
So I always recommend, in addition to the reports that automatically are generated with end of year, I like to have a day sheet for the year. So you don't get a day sheet by default. I like to do a day sheet for everything this year right before I run my end of year. So do your end of month and then do the day sheet and then run your end of year.
Yeah.
That's the additional one I recommend. You have some additional recommendations too.
Well, here's my whole list. I mean, I have a ton of them, and these are in the Facebook group. And this is honestly, I've been compiling this list because sometimes people will ask mid-year, "Hey, can I get a report from last year of X?" And so I just started building this list to say, as part of your end-of-year process, print these reports because you can't go back and get them later on. So
Yeah.
why not print them now? Especially, one silly thing is a lot of people, and one of the things we're going to talk about is a lot of people will will do a fee increase,
Mm-hmm.
but then they wonder, what was my fee for a crown in 2012 or 2018? And there's no way to go back to that. So we can also run that service code master in order to be able to see your standard fees from 2023.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And some of these reports you mentioned are year-to-date totals, and that's why they're not recreatable and why you can't run them after your end of year is created, because they reset. So making sure you have all of those that you need ahead of time is really important.
Yeah. And those people who are, looking at transitioning out of particular PPO plans, that service code the insurance company productivity report, that's something you want to print, because if you decide to do that in June of next year, you only have January to June of 2024 to go by. So let's print those reports now. So,
yep. Very good. Very good question.
All right. So should I do my fee increase now?
I would say the vast majority of our customers like to do their fee increases around this time. So there's the CDT code updates and fee increases, and a lot like to do those at the same time. And it's good to do those at the same time because we recommend exclusive use in a current backup before you do any fee increase or CDT code updates. And that means you need to do that when you're not seeing patients. And do you want to do 2 steps or do you want to do 1 step for that? So yeah, it's a great time to do fee increases, as well as update your CDT codes. And by the way, 2024 CDT codes are ready already.
Yep.
So yeah, it's the earliest, I think, from what I can remember, that we've had them ready. So
is the fee utility ready?
Yes,
awesome.
It's ready.
Awesome. That's cool.
It
All
is.
right. Yeah, because every year I always post, if you want those, and there's only a couple codes that are anybody's ever going to use, but the codes are out and we're ready to install them. So let's do that.
Yeah. Well, just a little bit more on that. If really research before you decide that you want to run the CDT utility to update all, not all service codes are applicable to your practice, and it's a lot of effort to do the CDT update. So is it really worth it? Or is there just like 3 service codes that you want? You can manually enter those 3 service codes and not have to run the whole utility.
Yeah.
Plus, the next version of Eaglesoft is going to automatically include those with the upgrade.
Yeah. And one nice thing about manually adding, and this is just because I'm a control freak, but as you add those new codes, you can actually put in your fees, and you can also put fee schedules in at the same time as you're entering those codes. So sometimes it's easier to do it. Again, if you're adding 3 codes, put the 3 codes, put the 3 Ps and the 3 fee schedules as you go, and you're done. So
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, because you still have to go and manually edit those after the utility is done if you want to adjust the default pricing, etc.
Yeah.
So
Yep, cool. All right. So I ran my end of month and end of year, but I still have checks to post. What should I do?
So that's a common question we get a lot. You know, if you still have checks to post, did you deposit those checks already?
I,
I mean, does it hurt to have those checks posted in the next year? So I always kind of ask, you know, what's your concern with not having those included in the previous end of year? Because your patient balances are still going to be accurate. I think it just really depends on exactly what you want on your end of year reports. What's your advice on that?
I think the ship has sailed.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
the question answered itself. You've already run your end of month. You've already run your end of year.
Hmm.
It's over. It's a
Right.
sealed. It's like calling your bank and saying, "Hey, I'd like this check to go back into my June bank statement."
Right.
It's over.
Right.
They're not going to do it. So it's
Yes.
over. Just move on. Those checks are going to go into 2024.
Hmm.
We can edit the date of service so that we can show that they were posted. I mean, the entered in December, but they're going to be on your day sheets for 2024.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's a lot of effort. You can't actually add them to your previous end of year. You would have to run another end of day to include those, another end of month, and then another end of year. And then you would still have to manually add those
Yeah.
totals on the report. Yeah.
And then you have
So,
two 2023s, so it's not worth it.
yeah.
So let's move it. All right, what was next? How to save end of year reports to the Practice Smart Doc. Here's one we were going to talk about.
We were. Yeah. So if you're on what I consider a recent, it's actually been several versions of Eaglesoft, and most of our customers are on this. It defaults to have the preference saved to automatically save your end of year reports into the Practice Smart Doc. And what's really cool is you actually don't even have to print them. I think for your end of month, you do have to print them to save into Smart Doc, I believe. But for end of year, with the latest versions of Eaglesoft, you actually don't have to do that.
Yep.
So
yeah, and
yeah.
here's the setting in file preferences. And you can see that they're grayed out, so they're by default going to automatically go into your Smart Doc. And just so everybody knows, if you didn't realize this in 2022, when you did your end of year, those things were saved, and they're saved under list, practice information, and then there's a Smart Doc button there, and that's where they're saved. One thing I will tell, one of the things that I do, I hate paper. So I have my default report printer as the PDF, Windows PDF printer. So no matter what, I always save to PDF even before I print something. If I'm going to print it, it's saved as a PDF into a folder on my server. And then if I actually have to print it, I will actually print it from there. But my default printer is my PDF printer. So,
yeah. And to be specific about these preferences, in version 21 and above, these preferences are turned on by default and grayed out. You can't turn them on. In version 16 and above, if the preference is checked, you don't have to print your end of year for those reports to save to Smart Doc. So you get them.
Perfect. And that was my last one.
That was it. Right?
That was it.
Yeah. So those are all really great questions. And I would say that's probably also kind of summarizes a majority of the calls we get regarding end of year. Where do I reprint my end of year reports if, I ran out of paper or I lost it or accidentally threw it away? I don't know about you, but if it's a piece of mail and I don't think I need it, I throw it away. I just don't like to have the clutter.
Yeah.
So I know that, we do that often as humans. So you can definitely get a majority of those reports as long as you, the ones that, aren't part of end of year, you ran before end of year. So when we were talking about, those different reports that don't print with end of year, you can run those and save them to Smart Doc as well manually. So you can access those again and you don't have to keep the paper too. That's also a really common question that we get. How do I save this so I can access it again, even though I can't run it again after end of year is completed? You run your report And there's some options in there to save it to your practice smart dock.
Yeah. And anybody's looking at any kind of transition, and when I say transition, that could be transitioning out of insurance, that could be transitioning out of PPO, contracts, but also if you're considering selling your practice, you know what, saving these documents to SmartDoc. Actually, if you ever go to settlement and you need these, these 5-year plan informations documents, that's where they're going to be. And if you don't do it at your end of year and you're not saving it to SmartDoc, hopefully you're saving it to paper someplace. But
yeah.
SmartDoc's a great place to just make sure it's there.
It really is. Cool. Yes, absolutely. And making sure you're backing up. And, that's something that we tried to get on a previous video, but, number one thing that I can recommend is to ensure that your backups are valid. Yep. Not just that they're being done, but they're actually valid. So restoring it a couple times a year to like a standalone laptop or something like that, just to make sure that it's a valid backup and you're seeing the accurate data in there. And also making sure that you're stopping your database engine before you're running the backup, unless you have something like a Patlock or a DDS rescue, which you can get through Patterson. Those are the only backup systems that are authorized to run the backup while the database engine is running. Outside of that, the files are in use and they can't back up properly. Yeah.
And, I challenge everybody at least once a year to talk to your IT company and say, challenge them with this and just say, you know what? Bring me a copy of Eaglesoft on a laptop as if the office just disappeared tomorrow.
Yes.
And I've had this happen. So have them actually come in with a laptop and say, here's your Eaglesoft. The data is accurate up to yesterday. And I can prove to you that the backup is good.
Yes.
And without that, you don't have a backup. You don't have a reliable backup, in my opinion. So, make sure your IT company is challenged with that on a regular basis and say, I want to see it backed up and working. Yeah. Because what's my disaster plan? What if there's a, hurricane? What if there's a tornado? I want to see my backup and I want to see that it's restored properly.
And that just confirms that the backup should be on a device that's separate from the server, can be taken off site or in the cloud. Cloud is really a great option.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, this is awesome. Thank you. This will be about a half-hour video for everybody to watch. And if you can think of anything else, when this gets posted, make sure you guys just ask questions. And Misty will be looking at it. I'll be looking at it, and we'll get back to you with answers, or we'll send you the right direction to find the answer for you.
Yeah. And, if you're wanting to reach out to Patterson Support, just an update on our holiday schedule. We'll have limited holiday coverage available this week on Friday. So that's Christmas Eve observed for a lot of customers. And typically in the past, we've been closed for those days, but we are doing limited coverage from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on that date with our Eaglesoft customers. And then we're also doing the same on New Year's Day, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Limited coverage for emergency situations that you really need to make sure they're handled on those days. And so then we will be closed.
Christmas Eve business observed this year is Friday, December the 22nd.
Yes.
So limited business hours. I just want to be clear that we're not talking about Sunday the 24th.
Right.
Friday the 22nd is the business day for Christmas Eve. So just so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yep. We will be closed Christmas Day for our employees to enjoy the time with their family. And then again, the limited hours on Monday, January 1st, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So, yeah.
You don't have to worry about New Year's Eve this year because it falls on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. And I will be in touch soon. And I'm sure we'll get some more questions.
Sounds great. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you.